So we first heard about GC, a coworker friend of my mom's invited us because she was on the launch team for GC. And we had already had our home church, but we decided we would go out of support for this friend of ours. So we came to GC day one, launch day, and at that time in my life, I was a junior in high school. Like I said, I'd grown up in church, but at that point in my life, it had kind of become more of a box to check, and something that I was supposed to do and something I was taken to do my whole life. And so, but after that first experience, we got back in the car. It was my parents, one of my sisters and I. We got back in the car. Mom asked, what'd you guys think? And we were all in agreement that we'd be back the next week. And then we went back the next Sunday. And from then on, GC was our home. And GC really took what I saw as a box to check and just really turned it into a lifestyle, which I think you can see throughout this community, the life change that happens through GC. But I will say in my young to mid 20s, there were some years that I refer to now as like my prodigal years. Not necessarily because I walked away from church entirely or from my faith, but it's just the fact that I no longer prioritized it. And then in April 2021, what I had made my world walked away, and I had to walk through a season of divorce. But from the foundations that had been poured all throughout my life, I knew that if I was going to make it through this season, that I was going to have to come home. And not only did I know I had to come home, but even more so that I could come home. So I started coming back to GC regularly again. And I knew that was going to be hard. I walked back in carrying a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of guilt. And I knew that people would ask me. But now looking back in those times when I felt like this person was no longer beside me that was supposed to be, looking back, I can now see every time I shared that with someone that I now had someone else walking alongside me, someone else that was covering me with love, covering me with prayers, locking arms with me, letting me know that I wasn't going to walk through this season alone. Oftentimes when you feel like you have finally found your footing again, that's when another wave of grief will come and take you back under. Then mid-January, a wave of grief came, and this one was unlike any other. It took me so deep to where I was just numb, and that was a really scary feeling. But then our 24-hour prayer experience as a church came up, January 27th and 28th. I told myself I was gonna go to it. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was planning on going that Saturday, the 28th. But the night before, Jessica Petty had posted a video kind of giving a rundown of what that day was gonna look like. And in her video, she told about how there were gonna be crosses available to nail something to that you needed to lay down. And in that moment of watching that video, I knew what I needed to nail to that cross, but I wasn't quite ready to fully dive into that. And ultimately, what I nailed to the cross that day, what I wrote on my paper was, love them anyway, forgive them anyway, because I knew forgiveness was something I was meant to give, what we're called to give as Christ followers, but it's something that my humanly flesh wasn't ready to let go of for a long time. But that day, I decided that I wasn't going to let grief speak louder than grace anymore, and that I wasn't going to allow that to weigh me down anymore and to live in that hurt anymore. And so that day I laid it down at the feet of Jesus and I nailed that to the cross. And from that moment, I had such a sense of freedom wash over me and such a weight lifted off of my shoulders that I hadn't felt for almost 2 years. And most of all, I had felt this peace wash over me. And it's a peace that I really never thought I would feel. But when I nailed that to the cross, and I truly felt this peace that just surpassed all understanding. And so that day I decided that I would be rebaptized. And so on March 5th of 2023, 11 years and 1 day after I walked into GC for the first time, I was rebaptized by my brother. It was really special having my brother Bo baptize me that day, because that day in April 2021, when my world shattered, I ran to Bo's front door and knocked on his door, and he opened it, and I just collapsed into him. And he just caught me and held me And so he was the first person to physically hold me in this season that I'd be walking through in the past 2 years. And so then to have him be the person to be there for me and to help me walk into this new life in Christ, it was really special. And I can't help but see that as such a picture of Jesus, of how Jesus just wants us to run to him and collapse into him because he'll catch us. And he'll carry us through anything we're walking through. I'm just really full of gratitude, not only for how far God has brought me and how he has restored my heart and reshaped it, but for GC being part of that process too. No matter how dark it feels or lonely it feels, or how heartbreaking it is, just remember that God is with you every step of the way. And he's holding your heart. He's catching every piece that breaks off of it. And he's not going to let any of those pieces go. He's going to hold on to them until you surrender it to him. And he's going to piece it back together. He's going to mold it. And ultimately, he's going to restore it.